Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In this podcast, we will interview individuals who have been successful within athletics and beyond. We hope that these interviews will encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. We hope you enjoy our conversations and join us in understanding women's health today to ensure women's health tomorrow. Denile Hill is a certified health and wellness coach, certified personal trainer, and owner of the Whole Human Project. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Kentucky and has over 25 years of experience in a variety of settings. Denile has been an athlete throughout her life, but lost her identity as an athlete after having 2 kidney transplants. She has reclaimed that identity and is now focused on maintaining activity for a lifetime. Denile is an active member of the cycling community in Lexington, serving as treasurer of the Bluegrass Chapter of the Kentucky Mountain Bike Association and co-founder of the Kentucky Interscholastic Cycling League. This league is a statewide initiative for kids in grades 6 through 12 that includes a component specifically for girls called GRIT, Girls Riding Together. Denile is an active role model for girls and women, including her own daughter, and is always looking for new ways to create belonging and community while promoting an active lifestyle. Welcome, Denile. Thank you so much for joining me today via Zoom. I know that you have lots of experiences to share, so I think we'll just jump right in.
Okay.
Great. So could you tell our audience about your current work as a certified wellness coach and personal trainer?
Okay, so this is actually the big part of the story for me, and kind of where that all starts is, so I worked for, when you're very young, you kind of do what you need to do, and I was a hairdresser, and the first salon I worked at owned a women's aerobic studio, and I started taking classes there, and then the owners of the hair studio and the fitness studio said, do you want to learn to teach? And I was like, yeah, this is fun. And that was really just where I started in the fitness industry. And I was a young woman and I had been an athlete. I played volleyball and basketball and ran track and all that in middle school, and then kind of dwindled off for me in high school. Had a coach that didn't like my blue lipstick for playing basketball, and it just, was just one of those things, and that's what happens to a lot of young women. So this introduction in my early 20s was nice to get back to moving and those things, and so that's kind of where this all started for me, and it evolved in, going back to school and getting degrees, and so eventually I found myself in a position in my life where I'd always kind of meant to do this thing that I just hadn't done, and that is the Whole Human Project. And the reason the Whole Human Project came about was because all the years I had spent working in medical fitness, working for wellness centers, doing exercise prescription, as not as a physical therapist, but I worked for just a wellness center where we address, more people with more significant health issues, and setting up obviously good programming for them. In all the years that I went through that and really did a lot of work with women, was that I noticed that people had trouble sustaining routines or habits, and they would kind of fall off. And that in fact, health was almost never the focus of what they were doing, which is insane. I mean, it's crazy. And the other thing is that, we're walking around as humans, working on the outside of our bodies while never addressing what's going on in the inside of our bodies, and our our souls and our minds and our hearts and our emotions, and you can't gain health until you address those things. So the Whole Human Project was this whole history of my experience and wanting to really do something to make a change in the world around what I had seen that really is a little dysfunctional.
Yeah, so you'd been in that world of health and fitness in a lot of different capacities and seen some opportunities where we could do things differently. Do you have a motto or a mission or a set of values that guides the Whole Human Project?
We do. there are a few things that guide us. Healthy at Every Size is actually a movement, so to speak, and we subscribe to the idea that no matter what your weight, no matter what your age, no matter what is going on, that you can be healthy, that healthy can be your focus. There's this kind of this misnomer that healthy at every size is like, oh, it doesn't matter, what you weigh, you just, it is in supporting people where they are in that moment to focus on their health, and that weight loss is not necessarily always the best way forward for a lot of people, and that by focusing just on weight loss, very often we're driving people in the opposite direction that they need to be moving. So that's one of the things, for me, that's very fundamental. And then also just teaching people how to eat again. We live in a culture that continually reinforces some ideologies that are unhealthy and really unhelpful. The diet and fitness and beauty industry are combined $750 billion a year industries. And as women, we are the direct targets of those industries. And they kind of have these unattainable goals. If you look at the imagery that surrounds a lot of it, I always say, like, when did extreme fitness become the norm? When did this become what our goal is? And then also, they are really predatory. They seek out their success on our lack, keeping us feeling like we don't belong, like we're not worthy. So that's part of what, I always say it's a health revolution. That's what I want to start. And then sadly, at times too, to paint with a much broader brush, sometimes even within our own medical industry, we actually aren't helping people to become healthier because there's a kind of a lack of continuity within your healthcare that speaks to where you're at as a human and what your needs are, because we tend to go right back to BMIs and weight loss and things like that again aren't always the most helpful for getting people healthy.
Or helping people along that journey, right? And I think what I'm hearing there is, in a lot of ways, everything you're doing is helping to make health and wellness accessible to everyone, so that it's something that people feel like they can have and is really accessible.
Right. So, when it feels like a revolution, because we really do have to work against generations of just these ideologies about what a woman looks like as an athlete, and what an athlete is, and what health is, and what fitness is. And so the Whole Human Project is a project. There are so many universal questions. There are not universal answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. And I think that's what happens to us is we start seeking out ways to be healthier. And what we're led to is these universal answers. And they don't work because they don't address necessarily what's going on with us personally. A lot of times they're just, kind of pie in the sky ideas. And so that the Whole Human Project is a project. It is not a final answer, but the goal is health. That is the final goal, is health for everybody, and what that means to you as an individual.
Awesome. So what do you love about your work? And then as a secondary piece, what do you find most challenging?
I love people. And I mean, that might sound kind of like, a pat answer, but I love working with people. I feel like that connection is what we all seek, that the ability to give somebody that connection that is helping them to find, their own answers in their own time, giving people space for that and creating empathy around that is what I love. It's what I love doing. I feel like it's what I was put on this earth to do, which sounds kind of crazy, but when you find it, you're like, how am I gonna do this?
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is, to me, feels like the great undoing. Every time I sit with a client, it's like we have to just not only unpack their stuff, but we have to unpack everything around us. And I see the fear in their eyes. Like, it's absolute fear to say to a woman, we're not going to focus on weight loss. And they're like, what? Whoa. And that to me is what it's frustrating. So that's the challenge for me. That's the big challenge, is changing those narratives, changing that conversation. Because here's the thing, Dee, we don't actually know what the narrative needs to be. Like, people say, well, what should we be doing, or what are the words? And I'm like, we're finding our way together. Again, that's why this is a project. So that's really the big challenge for me.
Yeah, and maybe those words are different for different people, right? That what gets you to health might be different than what gets me to health, and recognizing that and then helping people move forward is a challenge for sure.
Right, right.
So throughout your life, you have had health challenges that have led you to be the person you are today and have shaped how you think. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about some of your experiences. You've had 2 kidney transplants, and I know that that's transformed how you think about health, your own health, and probably helping others as well. So can you talk about that experience and how that shaped your beliefs, values, behaviors?
Yeah, that is the kind of one of those story of your life things, and something that I desperately for years didn't want to make part of my spoken narrative. But then as you get older, you realize these things, as painful as they can be, can also be profoundly empowering, not just for yourself, but for others, when you're willing to tell your own story. And so, when I was 12 years old, well, actually before that, I was about 6, and I had a fever and it wouldn't go away. And my mom would tell me, like, oh, you would have these, your whole life up until then, you would get kind of quiet and you'd quit playing, but then a day later or something, you'd feel better and there were no symptoms. I was just kind of, lethargic, and was a very active child. And then that would happen. So she would take me to the doctor, and there was never anything really wrong. And so when I was 6, I had a fever that just would not break. And they discovered that I had urinary reflux, which means the valves that sit at the top of your ureters were not working properly, and the urine was flushing back into my kidneys and creating scar tissue because I was a growing child. So I had my first surgery when I was 7 years old to correct that. And that started a lifelong journey of kidney issues. And if you know anything about your kidneys, they're really, really important. So when I was 12, I told you I was I was a kid, I was an athlete. I went for a sports physical, and they said, oh, you have high blood pressure. And I was devastated. I was 12. So I started taking blood pressure medicine at 12 years old, which is, gosh, parents, if you're out there, that is tough. Watch your kids, especially when they're teenagers. They won't take their medicine. I know this. One of the other things we discovered along the way, in looking at kidneys, was that I had scoliosis, but I was a gymnast as a kid too. And so they were like, does she have pain? Is she not fine? So these things were just like all kind of coming up. So they told my parents, and I remember them telling me when I was very young, you will need a kidney transplant at some point in your life. And they thought it would be in my 40s. Well, when I got pregnant with my daughter, I had my daughter a month before I graduated from high school. So to all the teen moms that may be out there, you're only going to be a teen mom till you're not a teen, and then you'll just be a mom. So don't worry about that. But my kidney function, I had a very high risk pregnancy, and my kidney function was reduced to 33% from 85%. And that was just the effect of pregnancy, right? So this is about speaking to our lives as women and the cycles in our lives. And I'm glad that I am a mama. I could not have children later, so, because of my health. So I think all things work out like they're supposed to. So I had my first kidney transplant in 1997. I was 26 years old. And I had, up till then, I'd spent about 9 months on kidney dialysis, on hemodialysis. And I still felt pretty good. I wasn't as active. I noticed, like I told you, I was teaching classes. When I finally figured out something was going wrong and my kidneys were actually at a pretty low point for function, was I was teaching a class and I just couldn't I couldn't catch my breath.
Mm.
Didn't have any red blood cells. So, you know, um, and so I had that transplant for about 6.5 years, and I had, I like to live pretty big. For me, living big is, traveling as much as I can, being outside. I'm an outdoors woman. I love whitewater. I love mountain biking, snowboarding, backpacking, like you name it. I was a guide, like I squeezed it in. I was 6.5 years. And then I lost my transplant. And through the work of some very good doctors in Cincinnati, I was able to receive that transplant. But you can imagine what happens to your body after 12.5 years on dialysis. I mean, everything I thought I knew about myself, everything I was so wrapped up in being this woman who was fit and healthy. And you really learn what it means to focus on those times. And so after that, in 2015, I received that second transplant from a cadaveric donor. And I was like, I'm back. And then it's like, oh wait, your body's changed. You went through, I went through menopause early.
Yeah.
It's because of dialysis. So now I'm postmenopausal. I was 45 at the time, and just after transplant, I was postmenopausal. And you've also had all of this stuff that's happened to your body. So that's the story of like, now I'm here. What do I do? How do I find my identity again? And this kind of stepping back from my life and kind of looking at the way my life developed and thinking about other women. And so not only do our bodies go through these huge cycles and seasons, right? But if you are faced with a health challenge, that just creates a whole other layer of what it means to be a healthy, active woman.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about how you got back to being, reclaiming yourself as an athlete after that experience and really reclaiming that identity.
That was just a fundamental reckoning. I had preached my whole life to women, you're an athlete, you just don't know it. You have this inner athlete. She looks like whatever you want her to look like. That was always in the back of my mind. So I had always had an athlete's body to work out in, right? That the apparel industries give us. And your body feels good, right? Joints don't hurt, and maybe they do because you worked a little too hard or whatever. So for me, it was not worrying about dealing with what made me comfortable to move, and the movements that made me comfortable, not comfortable. I don't mean you're not sucking wind. I don't mean that your muscles don't hurt the next day. But I do mean things that brought me happiness and joy. And fortunately, being part of an outdoor community and a mountain biking community, that was an easy space for me to reclaim that in. Because very supportive. I made it that way, actually. Damn it! I'm going to tell you right now. I had to insert myself and say I'm here just like I am, and find the people that were willing to support, that weren't giving me this other narrative about what a mountain biker looked like or what she should be able to do. So that it really was for me about having confidence to just kick that door in myself and then drag along the people that I was like, they got my six, like they're on my, we're good. So that for me has been just a constant reminder, you can't pursue health if you're not moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that, you kicked down your own door and you just surrounded yourself with that community who you knew would be supportive of you and those efforts and what you wanted to do. So I think that's an awesome message for anyone out there who is, maybe hasn't kicked down the door yet. Maybe they know what they want, but they haven't pushed that door down yet. And it's probably challenging, but it's, I think, gotten you to a really good space.
Yeah.
So you mentioned
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, you mentioned the cycling community, and I know that you are very well integrated in the cycling community here in Lexington for youth and adults and pretty much everyone at this point. So could you tell us a little bit about that community and your work in that community?
Sure. So, cycling is one of those things that we get to do, hopefully a lot of us as kids. And then it can be a lifelong sport, which is what I really like about cycling. I told you I played sports through school, and a lot of people play sports through high school and college and things like that, but then you get done and you're like, what now? And so
Where
that's
do I
one of the,
transfer those skills, right?
right, that's one of the, it's like you can go find a pickup basketball game maybe, or you know what I mean, but cycling is something you can do your whole life. You don't necessarily have to have others to do it. It's nice, but so when I fell backwards into the cycling industry. I actually have worked in the cycling industry for 17 years. And part of that was not feeling capable of being at the time during dialysis, a personal trainer anymore, because of the physicality of the job. I'm doing it again, thank goodness, but I found the cycling industry, and I'd always been a cyclist. And then I was in my early 20s when I started pursuing kind of the outdoor stuff. Mountain biking came my way, and I fell in love with it. And it was the one thing I could do, no matter how I was feeling. And you can go out and ride your bike for 10 or 15 minutes around your block, and to me, that's a cyclist. I don't care what you're doing. If you're on a bike, you're a cyclist. That's the bottom line. So I just kind of got involved in the bike community, and then I got involved as a Trek Women's Advocate. Trek Bikes has an advocacy program to put more women on bikes, and to also put more women into the industry, acknowledging that we lack some diversity, inclusivity there. And then I started getting involved with something called NICA. It's the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. It's a mouthful. Kentucky did not have a mountain bike league for kids. However, any state that has one, if your state touches theirs, your kids can be part of their league. So our kids in Kentucky were going to Tennessee to ride their bikes. And I thought, man, we need this. Like, Kentucky deserves this.
Yeah.
Our kids deserve this. And the cool thing, so I helped co-found the Kentucky Interscholastic Cycling League. We actually start our first official season as a league next year. And it's been a big buildup. We've been doing this since 2017. So it's really a big buildup, and we're really excited. We right now have 8 teams that are all still registered and racing in Tennessee. But kind of the cool thing about this is our league is not just about racing. We have a lot of kids that never race. We do adventure weekends. We teach kids how to work on bikes. But what I really like about it is all of our coaches come from the community. Their parents or just interested parties. We have a program called GRIT, which is Girls Riding Together. And it is a way that we create equity for girls and women within the sport, to bring them in. And so there's this kind of this, I don't call it a trickle effect. I think it's actually a build effect. You get a kid on a bike, and then their parents don't have to sit on the sidelines at practice. Their parents can get trained and certified as coaches, even if they've never ridden a mountain bike before. You don't even have to know, we teach you. And you don't have to have some great skill levels. We need people at every level coaching and riding. And so then the parents get involved. And then during race weekends or adventure weekends, like, grandparents come, siblings come, the dog comes, the family dog, and we're all there together, and we're like cheering and having a great time, and it doesn't matter what kind of bike you're on. And then all of a sudden you have a community that's getting healthier. And so for me, I'm not from Kentucky, I'm from Michigan, but I love Kentucky. I love our Appalachian regions. I love our Bluegrass region. I just love Kentucky, and I think we deserve this. So it seemed like a no-brainer. If you get the kids healthier and moving, and you allow the families to become part of that, then it's natural. All the years I worked in wellness centers, we would always do this youth programming. You got to get the kids eating healthy. You got to get the kids moving. Well, if you don't bring mom and dad along, it's just not going to stick. So this is where we're at right now, and I'm really, really excited about it.
I'm glad to hear that that's moving forward. It's amazing how long it takes to get something like that up and off the ground. So kudos to you and everyone who's working on those efforts.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about other youth in the community, and you mentioned your daughter, and I'm wondering if you could speak to your experiences with health and wellness as a family unit.
Sure. We, it's funny, you raise kids, and my daughter, I felt, had exceptional exposure to things that I just didn't have growing up. My parents took us camping, and my my mom was a walker and my dad was a runner, and like, because remember this was the 70s and 80s, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did.
Yeah.
But as an adult, when I discovered, kind of the backcountry, the outdoors, my daughter grew up on mountain bikes, on snowboards, and in the backcountry climbing. And so what's really funny is about that is your kids are like, oh, we gotta go climbing. I don't
This
want
is
to go
the
climb.
worst.
Yeah, it's just terrible, right? We're gonna go, and we're gonna go paddle a river. I don't want to do that. So my daughter did grow up very active. She danced with a ballet company. That was something that she really liked, and we felt that it gave her a good foundation. However, I will say, I again, as a mother, oftentimes was up against the directors of the ballet companies, things they would say. I heard a two times. Once I heard the director of her company say to them, because she smoked, had been a prima ballerina, she smoked. They said, "Why do you smoke?" She said, "It keeps my weight down." I heard her say that to a group of teenage girls. And then one time I heard the other director of the company say to the girls, "You're eating too many cookies. You all are getting too fat." And you like, there's every mother like there lined up, like ready to just like tackle this guy. Um, so even getting your children active sometimes can, you know, have some fundamental, downsides. So as a family, we always tried to keep moving and be active. She grew up watching, she would come to the gyms and watch exercise classes or whatever. And so my daughter grew up in that environment. Now, I will say, when she was 25, we were mountain biking and she broke her leg. She had a trimalleol fracture and a dislocation, and had to have her ankle reconstructed. Took her completely out of ballet. She was teaching at that point while she was in college, and she had to redefine her life as an athlete. And on the tail end of recovering from this life-changing break at her ankle, she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And if you know anything about thyroid cancer, getting your thyroid, getting those levels back up and working again are a moving target. She is 30 years old now. I cannot tell you, and any woman who's ever had any thyroid issues can relate to, that hormone regulates everything.
So important for so many
Right.
things. Mm-hmm.
So now your body, again, feels very out of control. So I've watched my own daughter really struggle with getting back to healthy, finding
Mm-hmm.
her way forward. And so, as a mother, that's difficult. You want to support your kids, and watching what we go through, the way that we beat ourselves up as women for the way that our bodies look is, to me, absolutely unacceptable. Like, if I'm going to do one thing on this earth, it is I'm going to change that, at least for my community. We are going to quit beating ourselves up for having bodies that look like women's bodies.
Yeah, and just look like humans, right?
Right.
That
It's
are
the human
it's
form.
normal variation
Yeah.
in the human form, right? And I think it goes back to the very beginning where we started this conversation about controlling that narrative and kind of redefining what that narrative might look like.
Absolutely.
So I end every interview with the same question. What advice would you give to girls and women about playing sports or being active? Or, what is your take-home message that you hope girls and women hear if they listen to this podcast?
I would say, number one, no more apologizing. When you are the one that finishes your suicide sprints last, you don't feel bad. You go, I did it, and you don't apologize. You don't apologize for the shot you missed. We make apologies when we make errors or mistakes against other people, right? But we don't apologize for being who we are. We don't apologize for performance when we're giving it our all. We just don't. That's my number one piece of advice. Quit apologizing for being a human being. My second piece of advice is find movements that make you happy. that make it a joy to do. There are some people that love to run up and down a court. There are some people that like to run in the woods. There are some people that would prefer quiet settings, and some people that prefer gym settings. So give yourself time throughout your life to continually explore movement, to continually explore finding ways of moving your body that make you healthy. And P.S., it's not always going to be pain-free. As we get older, things happen to our bodies. We have to keep moving. We have to learn how to recognize good pain and bad pain, how to understand that sometimes getting to healthier spots with things like arthritis or back pain mean that we have to still exercise and find ways to do that. So spend your whole life exploring. Stop apologizing, go out and move.
I love it. Simple advice. I have one question about that second piece of advice about finding something that gives you joy. So I'm wondering if when clients come to you or when you're interacting with people, do people already know what brings them joy, or do they have to spend some time finding that?
I think the people that come to me are usually looking to get back on track, and they have been kind of given this like menu, like here's what you can do, pick from it. And I'm like, oh no, fortunately I have a huge body of knowledge around movement, around just different ways. And so very often it is about talking to somebody about how their body feels, what their goals are for what they want to do. So no, I would say it's almost always an explorative process and ever changing. It's a moving target.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I thought. I hear that a lot, find something you enjoy. And I just wonder if people already know what that is, or maybe sometimes they have to try more than one thing before
do you want to run every day? Or do
No,
you
absolutely not.
every day? Or do you want to do yoga some days? So giving yourself permission to not be 100% just driven in one thing. I mean, if that's what you do and you've got one thing that's just like blows your mind and makes you happy and makes your soul sing, do it. Otherwise, have some adventures. Give yourself this palette to paint your life with.
Great. Any other things you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I would say please visit me at thewholehumanproject.com. I do have a Facebook page. We are going to be changing our format very soon to look more like a project where people will be contributing. As I said, we have lots of universal questions and not a lot of universal answers, so I really want to start doing that. The other thing is we are getting our cycling league up and off the ground, so if you would like to donate to that, please go to KentuckyMTB.org. You can donate there if you want to really help get these kids up and moving in mountain biking.
Awesome. We fully support efforts to get kids up and moving. So
Me too.
we appreciate your time today, and thank you for sharing all of your powerful and impactful experiences with us.
Well, thank you, Dee. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Champions of Active Women podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and was produced by the Faculty Media Depot at the University of Kentucky. If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen and subscribe to all of our episodes wherever you find your podcasts. For up-to-date information about the Active Women's Health Initiative, you can find us on social media at UKAWHI. Thank you for supporting us as we work to promote health and physical activity among girls and women across the Lexington.